So quickly we'll create a Linux server on the cloud and we'll continue with some more basic Linux commands. Okay. The first concept in Linux that I want to show you today is called as user administration. Okay. See, what is that? Let's see. Fine. This is the server that I have created just now. Let me connect to the server. We know that we can connect to the servers with the help of a software called as Git Bash. Okay, fine. So once I'm connected to the server, remember, I told you that on a Linux machine, there are two types of users. One user is called as the root user and all other users are called as ordinary users. Once you log in into a machine to see which user is currently logged in Linux, we use a command called as who am I? Who am I simply tells you what is our username. In our case, that username is Ubuntu. It could be something else. Now, this user creation is what I'm going to show you. To create a user in Linux, we use a command called as user add. That's the command for creating a user and specify the name of the user that you want to create. That's it. When I hit enter, what is the error message coming on the screen? Permission denied. See, user add is a command which can be executed by the root user. Currently, we are not logged in as the root user. We are logged in as an ordinary user. So when you don't have permissions to run a particular command, try to implement the same command with something called as sudo. Sudo will temporarily give you higher permissions. Okay. So see, it is something like this. On my computer, if I want to open Notepad, I can just click on this. You see, you have an option called right click and click on run as administrator. That is also opening Notepad with much more higher privileges. The same thing in Linux, we give it via sudo. Now, I did not get any error message, which means a user called Sai has been created. Now, once the user Sai is created, I want to set a password for this user. How do you do that? This is the command to do it. Sudo password. Which user you are working on? Sai. It's asking you to set up the password. You can give your password 2 times and that's it. It says that password has been updated successfully. I hope you are understanding. User add is the command for creating a user. Password is the command for creating a password. Generally, what happens on a Linux machine is if you want to create whenever we create a user, remember, we were actually working very frequently on a file called /etc/password file. Whenever we create a user, that user information gets stored in this file called /etc/password file. Let us open that file and see, because just now I created a user with a name called Sai. So that information should be present in that file. Let's go and check it. Sorry, VAM. I did not show you VAM and all these things, right? I'll talk about that. Okay, fine. Cat, what is the name of the file? Do you see there is a user called Sai? Okay. The /etc/password file is something that is present on every Linux machine. And this file contains 7 columns of information. The first one is the username. The second piece of information is the encrypted password. The next one is the user ID. Whenever a user is created, Linux gives a unique number for that user. That's called as the user ID. The next one is called as the group ID. Okay. This is where you can give a comment, some description about the user. This is called as the home directory of the user, the default folder where he performs every activity. And this is called as the shell of the user or the default command prompt. Okay. Now user add can control all these components. How to control that? Let me show you. See what I am doing. I will say user add, create a user called as Ravi. But whenever a user is created, we notice that the user was coming with a user ID. Some unique user ID is given. I want to control that user ID. you can give like this -u and specify some number. So what happens? A user called Ravi gets created and his user ID will be which number? 1111. If you don't do that, Linux will automatically dynamically give some unique number. See, now open the password file. Do you notice there's a user called as Ravi? What is that fellow's user ID? 1111. Okay. Similarly, we see that a comment about the user can be given. Okay. Now I want to create a user and I also want to comment the user. Then as always, the basic command is same. User add. This time the username I am creating is Hari. So all your employees information is added on your Linux machines like this only. Okay. And then comment -c. And I will say Hari is just a normal user, which means ordinary user. Done. Now, if you open the /etc/password file, do you notice there's a user called Hari? And what is the description given to that user? He's just a normal user. Okay. Similarly, I want to create a user. You notice that whenever a user is created, the default directory is given as /home/ that username. I want to control that. I want to give some other directory for a particular employee. Okay. So then what is the command you give? The same thing. First, you start with a command called user add. And the name of the user that I'm creating is Raju. But now I will say the home directory, -d stands for directory, should be a folder called temp/Raju. So what happens now? A folder called a TMP folder. Within TMP folder, another subfolder called Raju. That will become the home directory of the user, which means when Raju user will connect to the Linux server, he will work in which folder? Temp Raju folder. Okay, done. Now, if you do go to the /etc/password file, see, for the Raju user, the home directory is given as temp Raju. Similarly, every user is getting a shell called as sh. sh is called as born shell. N number of shells are there. As I told you earlier, the most popular shell that is used in Linux is called as the bash shell. Okay. Now I want to create a user, and for that user, I want to make bash as the default shell for the user. Then what will I do? Then also you can give the same user add command. This time the user name is Anu. And to specify the shell of the user, I will say -s. Which shell you want? Bash shell. Now you see Anu user gets created. This is the Anu user that I have created. What is the shell that is given for that user? Bash shell. Understanding? Okay. So basically, whenever a user is created, these are the 7 parameters that are present. You can control them. Now, apart from this, there is also an expiry date. For example, let's say I'm joining a company as a contract-based employee, and my contract is going to expire on 31st of December this year. Only up to 31st December, I will be an employee in that company. So 2 months or 1 month like that. So after 31st of December, my account should not work on the servers because my employee last date is 31st of December. So what they will do, they will put an expiry date. This is how they do it. User add. Let's say I am creating a user called as Mallika. And for Mallika, I will say the expiry date is 31st of 12/2025. Whatever date you are giving should be a future date. That is the only requirement. You cannot give past date. That's it. When I do that, after 31st/12/2025, this Mallika account will not be working on that Linux server. Automatically, it will go away. Okay, that is how you put an expiry date. So whenever you join a company, what they do is they put an expiry date for 1 year or something like that. In between only, if you are leaving the company, they will delete that account. But otherwise, after 1 year, they will again renew that account. Okay. So, this information is not shown in the password file. You can see that in the password file, Mallika user is created, but it doesn't talk about the expiry date. Okay. See, all these commands can be given in one stroke. Just for the sake of understandability, I'm giving it as different commands. See, I'm creating a user called Rani. Now for Rani, I'll put everything. First thing I will give is the user ID. I want the user ID of this person to be 2222. The group ID of this person should be 111. the comment I want to give is I want to say Rani is a super user. Okay. I want to give the home directory of this user -d temp slash Rani. Then what else we have seen? I want to give the shell for the user. What is the shell you want to give? Bash shell. I want to set up an expiry date for the user. I want to give it as 31st 12. Let us give it as 2026. So what is going to happen now? User add, the user that you are creating is Rani. A user with a name called Rani gets created on my Linux server. That person's user ID will be 2222. The group ID will be this one. Comment, the short description is this one. The home directory will be a folder called temp Rani folder. Shell will be bin bash, and the expiry date, this account will work only up to 31st 12 2026. After that, that account will no longer be present on my Linux server. Done. Now, if you go to the /etc/password, see, there's a user called Rani. This is her encrypted password. This is the user ID. This is the group ID. This is the short comment that I have given for the user. This is the home directory of the user. And this is the shell of that user. I hope everyone is understanding. Okay.
Date forms, like we have to give the server. Now,
where do you want to give date?
If we want to change the expiry date, we have to follow the same not
that's it. Day, month, and year.
date.
Day, same, regular. How you write in Indian format, the same format. Day to month and year. That is the format in which you give. If you look at the Linux command called date, they are showing it like this. They are showing you Saturday, November 22nd. Then they are showing you the time and UTC time zones they are following. And year is 2025. But when you are trying to give the expiry date, first you are supposed to give the day, then you are giving the month, and then you are giving the year. This is the format in which you are giving the date. Fine. Let's move into the next one. We have seen how to create a user on a Linux machine. Now, delete these. So basically, every user will connect to the Linux server with his username and password only. Okay. Now, how do you modify a user? Once a user is created, I want to modify the user. We already know that the user's information is stored in a file called /etc/password file. Now, let us say I want to modify this user called Sai. What is his user ID? 10001. I want to make it as 1002. Okay. How do you modify that? There is a command called as user mod. This command also requires sudo permissions. User mod, which user you are modifying? Sai user. And I will tell the user ID of this person should be modified as 1002. Earlier it was 1001. Now you are modifying that user ID as 1002. You are modifying with a parameter called as -u. Done. Sorry, user mod, not mode. User mod. Done. Once it is done, now if you go back to your etc password file, see, Sai users user ID got changed as 1002. Let's say group ID I want to change. From 10001, I want to make it as 111. That group I want to give for the Sai user. Okay. So then the command is the same user mod command. But here you will use an option called G. And what is the value? 1111. Now, if you go to the password file, see, there is a Sai user and his group ID has been modified. You notice that for the Sai user, there is no comment. I want to give the comment or I want to modify the comment. That also you can do. How will you do that? Again, the same user mod command, but we will use an option called -c. C is for comment. I will say this is just a normal user. Now you go to the password file. See, Sai user is there and there is a short description given to the user. Similarly, I want to change the home directory. Currently, the home directory is /home/Sai. I want to change it as temp Sai. Okay, same thing. That also you can change. All you need to do is same user mod command. But to change the home directory, we use an option called as -d. D is for directory. Temp and Sai. Done. Now again open the password file and check for yourself. Sai users home directory became temp Sai. And similarly, the shell also I want to change. From bin sh to bash I want to change. Okay, so again I will give the same command, but the option I am supposed to use is S. And I can say bin bash. Done. Now, if you look at the /etc/password file for the Sai user, you can notice it has changed as bin bash. I hope everyone is understanding. Okay. Now, the same thing I can do in one single command also. For example, now I will take a user called as Ravi user. For this Ravi user, all these parameters will try to change in one single command. So, what is the command you are supposed to give? Sudo user mod. Which user you are modifying? Ravi user. First, I will modify the user ID. I will give the user ID as 1234. I will give the group ID. Let's say I want to give the group ID as 1112. Okay, some number 1112. And then what? I want to give a short description for this user. Okay, so I'll say Ravi is a high privilege user. He is a privileged user, which means he has more permissions on the Linux machine. Then what? I want to give the directory, home directory. I want to give the home directory as slash. I'm just taking slash tmp as an example. You can give some other folder as the home directory. Okay. Ravi. And what else you want to modify? Shell. I want to give the shell for this person as bin bash. I also want to set up the expiry date. I want to give the expiry date as 30th of November 2025. Sorry, 30th of November 2025. Okay. So see currently Ravi user data. This is the Ravi user data at this point of time. I'll just copy and put it somewhere in my text file. And after executing this command that I have created on my screen, if you open the same /etc/password file, look at the Ravi user and compare it with the previous data. Do you notice Ravi user ID changed, group ID changed. We have given some comment to the user. I have given the short description, I mean, the home directory of the user. And finally, we have given the shell of the user. Everything you can modify. This is a command for modifying the user. Creating a user is user add. Modifying the user is user mod. Now, let's say you want to delete a user. For example, I want to delete this user called as Anu. What is the command? Then you give a command called as user del. Which user you are deleting? Anu user. Done. It's deleted. Now, if you go to the password file, do you see that Anu user is no longer seen anywhere? Understanding? Okay. User creation, modification, and deletion of a user account. So generally, whenever you join an organization as an employee, on your name, a user account is created. When you are leaving that company, that account can be deleted with the help of the user del command automatically. Okay. Now, let's understand some backend behavior of what Linux is doing whenever a user is created. What Linux does is, whenever you are creating a user with the same name, Linux also automatically creates a group. That is the behavior of Linux. For example, if I create a user with a name called Sai, automatically Linux will create a group and that group name will be Sai. Okay. User information is stored in a file called /etc/password, whereas group information is stored by Linux in a file called /etc/group. That is a file where group information will be stored. So let us open that file and check for ourselves. /etc/group file. See, this is the file. Do you notice? I did not create these user. I did not create these groups. I created only users, but automatically it created the groups with the same name. Whenever a user is created, group gets created. If you create a group, user is not created. If I manually create a group via a command called group add, how user add command is there, group add command is also there. If you create a group, user is not created. But if you create a user, group gets created. Okay. So I'll explain it why this happens like that. How do you create a group? This is the command sudo group add. I want to create a group called as dev group, developers. I want to create one more group called as QA for testers. And I want to create one more group called as DevOps. I want to create one more group for my HR team, HR. Now, after doing this, if you go to the /etc/group folder, you see there is a dev group, QA group, DevOps group, and a HR group. But users are not created with the same name. Let's check that. /etc/password. The last user you see in my account is a user called Rani user. So when a user is created, group is getting created with the same name. But when group is created, user does not get created. Why it is so? Let's try to understand. We know that on a Linux machine, there are three classifications of people accessing a file: owner, group, others, right? Now, for security, what Linux does is, for example, let's say a person called Sai has created a file. What Linux does, when a user called Sai is there, automatically there is also a group called as Sai. Let's say I am creating a file called file1. Linux says that the owner of the file is Sai, group owner also is Sai. All others are treated as others. Ante ownership is also in my control, group ownership also is under my control only, security reasons. Until you change the group ownership and ownership, file will be controlled entirely by one particular user. Okay, let's practically see that. See, currently you are logged in as which user? Ubuntu. If I create a file now, owner of the file will be Ubuntu, group owner also will be Ubuntu. Let's create a file, touch file1. When I do that, if you do ls-l, see this. This is the owner of the file. This is the group owner of the file. Owner is Ubuntu. Group owner also is Ubuntu. Owner is having what permissions? Read and write. Group is having group kuda Ubuntu ne. Others are having only read permissions. Understanding? So whenever a user is created with the same name, it's creating a group. Whenever that particular person is creating a file, it is telling that owner is also this fellow, group also is that fellow only. So that control is entirely in his hands until he wants to expose it. Okay. Now, how do you change the permissions? We have seen there is a command to change the permissions called chmod. Already we have seen. If you want to change the ownership of a file, there is a command called as chown. This is used for changing the ownership. If you want to change the group ownership, there is a command called as chgrp. This is for changing the group ownership. Let me practically show you. The owner of the file is what? Ubuntu. But I want the owner to become Sai. So Sai, which file you are making? File1. This requires sudo permissions. Sudo. When you do that, it's done. Now if you do ls-l, do you notice earlier the owner of the file was Ubuntu. Now the owner became Sai. Group owner is Ubuntu. Sai is the owner. He has which permissions? Read and write. Group is Ubuntu. Ubuntu group has which permissions? Read and write. Anyone who does not fall under the category of Sai and group is treated as others. And others are having what permissions? Only read permissions. Understanding? Similarly, if I want to change the group, there is another command. chgrp. I want to change this to HR group. For which file you are changing? File1. After doing this, if you do ls, you can notice that Sai is the owner of the file, HR team is the group owner. Anyone who does not fall under the category of Sai and HR will be treated as others. Understanding? This is how you change the ownerships and group ownership. But keep in mind one thing. When you are changing the ownership, already that user should be created on the Linux machine. When you are changing the group ownership, already that group should be created on the Linux server. Understanding? Then only these commands will work. Okay. Now let's take another scenario. Touch. I will create a file called file2. Now, if you do ls-l on this file2, again, you can notice the owner is Ubuntu, group owner also is Ubuntu. We have seen that chown command can change the ownership. chgrp can change the group ownership. But chown can do both the things. I can give like this, chown, make the owner of this file as Ravi. And the group owner, you make it as DevOps. For which file? File2. When you give the chown command, Here it understands that this is the username. And after the colon, it understands that is the group name. So when you execute this command for file 2, the owner will become Ravi and the group owner will become DevOps. ls-l. Do you see? Owner has become Ravi and group owner has become DevOps. Okay, one more scenario I'll show you. Let's create a file called file3. Look at the permissions of the file. Sorry, file3 and ls-l on file3. Currently, you can notice that the owner is Ubuntu, group owner also is Ubuntu. Now I am giving the command like this: chmod QA on file3. What does that mean? Sorry, not chmod. Sorry. Chmod is for changing the permissions. Chown QA on file3. Chown is a command which is used for changing the ownership, but it will change the group ownership now. Why? Because you are giving this value after colon. Before colon, whatever is there, that is taken as username. After colon, whatever is there, that becomes the group name, which means the owner will remain as Ubuntu, but the group owner will become QA. Let's hit enter. And now you do ls-l. You notice the group owner became QA. Understanding? So chmod is for changing the permissions. Chown is for changing the ownership. chgrp is for changing the group ownership. All these are interrelated. Now, the chown command can work on files. It can also work on directories also. See what I will do. I will create a chain of directories like what we did earlier. D1, within D1, D2, D3, D4, like this. Now, if you do ls-l, D1 directory, who is the owner? Ubuntu, and group owner is also Ubuntu. Now I am giving the command chown. I want to make the owner as Sai and I want to make the group owner as DevOps on a folder called as D1. When I hit enter, this ownership and group ownership will be changed only for the D1 directory. Within D1 directory, what subdirectories you have, they will have the same old ownership and group ownership. See, it's done. Now, if you do ls-l, you notice that for the D1 directory, owner is Sai, group owner is DevOps. But if you go inside the D1 directory, you notice there is D2. For D2, what is the data you see? Ubuntu. You go inside the D2 directory, you see there is a folder called D3. D3 is still having the same old information, which means the chmod command is working only on the parent directory for changing the chown command is changing ownership and group ownership only for the parent directory. If you want to change ownership and group ownership for parent directories and child directories, everything, then you have to use an option called -r. R stands for recursive. Recursively, not only for the D1 directory. Inside the D1 directory, whatever subdirectories and files are there, everything it will affect. Wait, before executing this command, I'll create some files also within that folder structure. As of now, if you say tree on D1, okay, tree command is not there. Just give me a second. Software you are installing? Now, if you execute the tree command on the D1 directory, you see D1, D2, D3. Now, I just want to create some files. Within D1 directory, I want to create a file called file2. Oh, you don't have permissions. Acha, because we changed the ownership and group ownership, kada. So that's why permissions are not there. If permissions are not there, try to do that with something called sudo. It's working. Okay. Similarly, I want to create a file called as file3, but this file3 I want to create in D2 directory. Now look at the structure. Tree on D1. Do you notice? Within D1 directory, there's a folder called D2 and a file called as file2. Within D2 directory, there's a subdirectory called as D3 and a file called as file3. Within D3, you have D4 and inside D4, you have D5. I want the chown command to work for all the files and directories. Then what is the command you are supposed to give? I think I copied and pasted that command, right? So it's okay. Sudo chown. The command we are giving is I think they pinged their name. Chandu Sayanda. They pinged their name. Okay. Sudo online students, it will be, I mean, comfortable for all of us if you can just put your original names in the, participants list so that, our team can identify you easily. Okay. Just try to do that next time. For today, it's not necessary. Okay. own. I am saying the owner should be Sai. The group owner should be D1 for a folder called as D1 directory. And then I want to make this recursively. R means recursively. So that will be affected for the D1 directory. It will be affected for D2 directory and file 2. And in D2, it will affect D3 directory and file 3, D4 and D5. Everywhere it will affect. Done. Okay. Now let's check it. ls-l if you do, for the D1 directory, the owner is Sai and the group owner is DevOps. Okay. And within that also, the permissions are affected for everyone. In fact, you have a command called as ls-lr and if I'm not wrong, which will recursively show you everything. Just look at the permissions of the complete structure here. It shows that which command I have executed? ls. That's what. Where is that? ls-lr. See this? This is the parent directory. You have D1 directory, file 1, file 2, etc. But okay, let's execute like this. ls-lr on a folder called D1. This will be better. You will get the correct information. See, you see within D1 there is D2 and file 2. But the criteria is who is the owner? Group owner. But for both for file and directory. Similarly, look at this one. When you go into D1 and D2 folder, there is a folder called D3 and a file called file 3. What is the structure? Owner is Sai, group owner is DevOps. Owner is Sai, group owner is DevOps. The same thing for D4 directory. Similarly, the same thing for the D5 directory. Understanding, right? These are very important activities. Of course, currently, because we are just, we did not even start DevOps, we are doing these activities manually. But all these activities we automate with the help of a tool which is called as Ansible. Okay, because what we are currently learning is simple Linux administration activities. This is done by a Linux admin. As a DevOps engineer, you don't do Linux admin activities. What we do is we automate that. To automate, we should first of all understand how those things are done manually. That is why we are learning all these concepts. Otherwise, this is regular Linux admin work. This has got nothing to do with our DevOps activities. As a DevOps engineer, you know what to do? We created a user. They will ask you to create this user on 1,000 servers. Now you can't go to 1,000 servers and give the command user add, right? That is where this configuration management tool called as Ansible comes into picture. One server or 1,000 servers, Ansible can do that. So that is the kind of automation that we need to mainly perform, but that will slowly come up as we go with the sessions. Okay. So see, I think Monday's session, I will not teach Linux. This much of Linux is sufficient for the time being. Monday session, we will have a quick introduction on AWS, okay, and Azure. On AWS and Azure, to start DevOps, what are the basic services we should know? I'll try to first explain that. Once you are comfortable with that basic services concepts, then immediately we'll start with the first tool of our DevOps, which is Jenkins. This Jenkins sessions, you can practice either on the AWS cloud or you can practice it on the Azure cloud. If you listen to my Monday's class properly, you will understand that, okay, I can do this Jenkins on any cloud. It will work on both AWS and Azure. All we require is multiple Linux servers on which we can do it. Preferably, I would prefer you to practice it on AWS. Okay, though it works on Azure as well. Why I prefer on AWS is this AWS account will work for 6 months. So it's easy to practice all these things. On Azure, things happen very quickly. Only 28 days you use it. So better you try to do it on AWS. Even those people who are planning to go with Azure DevOps also, there are certain services which you have to do only on Azure. At that time, you can create the Azure account. For the time being, it's better that you do everything on the AWS cloud. That's my suggestion. But I'll show you on both the clouds. Finally, you can decide which one you want to go. Okay. So the basic Linux that we have seen is sufficient. As I was repeatedly telling you, don't be in a hurry to practice all this Linux. Take your own time. Take 1 month time to practice all these Linux commands. No worry. Basic Linux commands that we have seen in the first session, like touch command or cat command or mkdir command, rm command, cd command. This level of familiarity, if you have, that is sufficient. We can start with our Jenkins and tools. Okay. Yeah. Prithvi, if you have some questions, you can please unmute and you can ask your question. Or maybe you can ping in the chat box. Prithvi, do you have some questions? Okay, fine. So in case you don't have any questions, we'll wind up the session. Okay. Monday, things will
Can you
slowly
hear me
move.
now?
Yeah, Prithvi, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. So using the delete command, how can we delete a user? We have two users with the same name. How to delete a
No, no.
specific user?
You cannot have two users with the same name, Prithvi. Linux ensures that usernames have to be unique. That's one thing. And user ID also should be unique. These two things cannot be repeated on the same server.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
Yeah.
you.
So thank you so much.